This week, you will
identify the one target user. And I get a lot of pushback when I teach this. And people are telling me, no, you told me to think big, and this has to be big, otherwise it's not going to make the return. So this needs to be for the world. It needs to be 7 billion people that can use that. And I'll say to you, yes, in 5 to 10 years from now, perhaps, but you have to start somewhere. And it's very, very difficult to sometimes just sort of say, okay, we're going to really focus in on one of our users and start from there. So the exercise we give our entrepreneurs in the Guild Academy, and that I give you right now, is to create a user that is very, very specific. So we call this also in UI UX research the user persona. And what we want to know about this person is, what is their job? What's their demographic? How old are they? What background do they have? Which university did they go to? What are their fears and hopes that you think they have right now? Verbalize that pain right now. How they're solving that problem right now. What are their motivations in life in general? And what negative or positive trends and opportunities are they experiencing? So if you go back and you look at this woman versus this guy, these two people in this current situation right now, in COVID-19 times, in the relationship to a friendship app, might have very different kinds of problems that they want to solve, right? And you can make a lot of assumptions here, right? She might want to connect with her grandchildren more. She wants to have a way to actually play with them because video Zoom calls don't really work between kids age 8 and their grandparents. So maybe she's looking for a way to contribute to the childcare by reading them stories or something. This guy here might not be interested in connecting with grandchildren because he doesn't even have his own kids yet. All right, so maybe he's interested in connecting with people who are making smoothies at home, or like I'm just making this completely up here. But the idea is that you understand, like, I cannot design my first experience and the startup for these people and each one of these people here, right? It is not possible. And if you're trying to do it, you're gonna spread yourself way too thin. Don't do that. Make sure you really focus in on one person. Ask yourself too, where do you find information to solve their problem right now? So where do they go right now to solve their problem? What does that look like? Sometimes it can look as detailed as this. So this would be an example of a user experience interview with somebody. So we see a lot of things about this person, how old she is, her demographic, her goals, her type. Like this one is about travel planning, not as relevant right now, but they wanted to learn about travel and how she would react to certain things. And this is your typical first user persona, and you really draw this person in stick figures, and you write down, her age, her job. You can get much more detail than what you're doing here. And you can also show her in her environment, depending on your drawing skills. So this one is our big exercise for you to do to make sure you understand who that user is. So what we're doing as entrepreneurs, we're solving problems. We're solving people's challenges, and we want to move them from a state where they're not completely happy to another state where they're hopefully happier than before they met us or our product. So if you put that on a happiness scale from 1 to 10, you basically follow the simple concept of a before and an after concept of moving that customer from a certain level to the level later. And there is a lot of research done around what makes an idea a good idea and how many levels do I need to move this person up or promise that person to move them up for them to actually want and love my idea and pay for it and change, because they might already be doing something to solve that need, but it might not be perfect. So you want to offer them a solution that moves them at least 3 steps up. So, and in research that Prototype Thinking Labs has done, one of the companies that's supporting the Guild Academy as well, and Jay Lee is one of our speakers there, and she explains this, that on average, we are seeing taxi versus the Lyft, Uber ride-sharing solutions move customers from a 3 to about a 7 or an 8. Now that's 4 or 5 steps up the scale. And that's amazing. That's a lot of steps. And that's one of the reasons why Uber, Lyft, and the ride-sharing companies are so extremely successful. Like, we couldn't even think about going and, you know, moving in taxis anymore, right? And it's a huge disruption to your problem. And so your idea has to be able to move that person from where they are right now at least 3 steps up the ladder. So of course we don't know yet, because we haven't built the product yet. But that's why we need to do a lot of user interviews before we start building. So the problem you're solving has to be big enough for the customer to want to care. And what we're doing to understand what that problem really is and how we can solve that problem, we need a lot more information than what we have right now. And even though I don't know how much user research you all have done or how much you have talked about your idea yet, I bet you a lot of money that you have not done enough user research to this date. 99 out of 100 entrepreneurs I see have not done enough user research. And that needs to change, because that means you will build the wrong product for the wrong person if you're not going out there and talking to people. And I understand it's a big step to go out there and say, hey, I'm working on this idea, and you know, I really want to create something new, and would you give me some advice on that? It is a big step, but we have to get over it. And it's one of the things we teach in the Guild Academy. How do you get over that step? How do you get over that hurdle? And sometimes it's easier to do that with other people and know that other people are also going through this awkward process and not doing it alone. But how are we doing that? And that's what I'm going to tell you now in the next 5 minutes here. Like, how do you going to talk to these people? So right now you have a pretty good idea of what that person looks like that is your user, right? You have a drawing, you know what jewelry she wears, you know where she went to school, you know all these things. So now the question is, where can you find her right now? And this is really for COVID-19 times, because you can't go out there in the street. Otherwise, I would tell you, go down to the coffee shop, look for that person, ask them if you can have a few minutes of their time because you're doing a user research for your startup. I would also tell you, go to the ferry line where people are standing in line and ask them questions. All good ideas. Right now, that doesn't work. So where do you find these people? Well, you find them in your friend circles. You always have to be a little careful with friends, because they may not give you a complete, honest response to your questions. So you want to find them on social media and on the channels that you think use them. And now if we're going back quickly to this picture here again, do you think you're gonna find all these people, if this is your user or this is your user, do you think you find them on the same channel? No, they're not going to be on the same channels, right? So really think about where your target user lives and how you can get them to talk to you, to tell you about their problems. So, I mean, there's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, right? LinkedIn as well, Snapchat, and TikTok now as well for the younger generations, etc. Pinterest is a great one too. And so what you can do is say, hey people, I have an idea. I want to create this new business. I want to really learn from you if this would create value in your lives. Would you give me 30 minutes of your time and book it here? So I see a lot of people, what they're doing is they're actually telling me, oh yeah, I sent all these Facebook group requests and said, please reach out to me if you're open for you to do some user testing. Well, if you get an email or a Facebook message, like think about it, right? Always reverse it in your mind. Think about it. If you get this message, would you reach out to a stranger and via email and say, oh yeah, I'm interested in your user research? No, you have to make it really simple and easy for people to book that time with you to get on your calendar so you can easily talk to them. So what you want to do in the email or the post or whatever you're doing to reach out to people is you want to describe who you are, what you're trying to do, very short, because you don't want to already lead them with questions in certain directions. And you're not going to say, oh, I'm building this app for these friends and it's going to do all these things. It's not what you're going to say. You're saying, I want to solve a certain problem. Then people have issues, busy moms have issues getting together with their people. And I want to learn more about that if you fall into that category. And I would absolutely love and appreciate 30 minutes of your time if you could give me that time to talk about your experience. And here's a link. And I love Calendly. There's a lot of other scheduling tools, and they're also, a lot of them are free, right? Or have a freemium model. Acuity, lots of different tools. You put that link in there and say, here, click here to book your user session. If you do them in person, it's great to bribe people with berries or chocolate or things like that, or coffee. It does not need to have a price attached to it. A lot of people want to help you. And that is a big learning. And a lot of people are baffled by it when they do it the first time. They're like, you wouldn't believe 200 people filled out my user survey. And I'm like, yeah, because clearly they have a problem. They want you to solve it for them. So they're happy to help you. And especially right now, I think, yes, we're busy. And yes, especially when we have kids, we're even busier than before. But we also have more time. And some people have more time because they're not commuting, or because, a lot of business has gone down as well. So there is an opportunity to get in front of people, especially when there are people that are maybe not as easy to get in front of. Right now, it's easier to get in front of them by having them book a 30-minute call with you. And then I love Zoom, so I use Zoom, and Zoom is secure now. They changed a bunch of things after the news about some security holes. So you can use any kind of video chat, but you want to talk to them and see them so that you get all their reactions and it's not just a phone call. So I definitely would say use Zoom to do your user interviews. And a good rule of thumb is sort of 10 to 20 user interviews. I know that sounds like a lot, but if you sprinkle them across 1 week. I had an intern do some user testing interviews for us recently for Guild Circles, and if you should create these little mastermind groups, and she did them before the lockdown. She did them within 1.5 weeks. She had 25 users, and those were in-person interviews that she scheduled and talked through. So it's totally possible. You'll get a lot of information, and the key to the user interview is to not tell them what you want them to say. So the user interview. I love user interviews because I'm a very curious person. I like to learn about people and their problems. And so I actually really like them, and it's very surprising what comes up. But I'm also, as an entrepreneur, a very opinionated person. So I feel like I know what's right, and I know that the solution will solve all the people's problems. So it's difficult to balance this as an entrepreneur. Depending on what kind of a person you are, it is sometimes difficult to balance that. So that's why we have some guides here as well. And there's a lot of good online material out there as well. If you want to Google UI, UX, research, interviews, templates, and things like that, feel free to do it. You find a lot of things. We are not, the guild is not like the UI, UX Institute or anything. But what I'm going to tell you is a few things here about user interviews. So you want to start with qualitative research. A lot of people, because they don't like to talk to people and it's strange, they start with surveys. And surveys can be good too, and they are a step in your process when you do validation of your idea. But it's really important to start with the qualitative research. You want to talk to people, learn about the problems, and then you want to start creating questions that people can systematically answer in a survey. So you want to set a goal and outcomes. So what do you expect to learn from a user interview? You want to plan your questions. So you're not just going to sit there and talk. You want to have a question template there. You want to understand, discover, and find out. And you don't want to lead questions. So there's these two categories of questions: open questions, closed questions, non-leading questions, and leading questions. You describe what that experience looks for you. Can you tell me more about what kind of music you listen to? Can you tell me more about your listening experience? Where do you listen to music? Those kinds of things. You don't want to ask, what's your favorite music listening app? Or what's the biggest problem you have when listening to your headphones? Because what you're leading is that they have a problem listening to their headphones, and the user might be not even aware of that problem, or it might not be an issue for them. And now you push them into the direction to think about that problem rather than letting them explain what their biggest problem is when they're listening to music. And you will not talk a lot in this user interview at all. You will be the one who's listening 80-90% of the time and writing down. You also want to make sure, if you record it, which I recommend because I can't really process everything and write it down at the same time. Sometimes it's nice to have another person with you to actually write down the results. But what I like to do is I like to record it. Make sure you're actually recording. I've had interviews where I didn't press record, and that's really, really sad or annoying afterwards. So definitely also ask them for the consent to record this, and make sure they know it's anonymous, right? So that they know it's not being used on social media or whatever. And then what I always say is, collect their email address at the end of this. You probably already have their email address in this scenario here, where you're asking people to fill out a Calendly. Obviously they put in their email address here, but ask them if they are okay for you to send them follow-up emails, because here is the point where you're starting to build your audience and your mailing list. And that mailing list and that newsletter list that you are creating, this can be a lot of people in this list here right now. And so I want to make sure you capture that and don't forget about that.
Good luck with your user interviews this week, and I'll see you on Friday.